A leaked video of Jungkook begging Jimin stuns fans, but Jimin's unexpected response leaves even HYBE speechless and hearts shattered. "No cameras, please. Jimin, I'm begging you, just hear me out." The voice was trembling, shaky, raw. The leaked footage had no filters, no production polish, no idle perfect lighting, just a dimly lit backstage hallway. Walls stained with years of echoes and rushed footsteps. Now suddenly hosting the most intimate collapse of a man who had once stood unbreakable on global stages. Jungkook was on his knees, not metaphorically, physically. Knees against cold concrete, hands gripping his thighs as though trying to hold anything together. His voice cracked again. "I never meant for it to happen this way. I should have protected you. I should have stopped them." A single camera, clearly unauthorized, shaky, hidden, caught it all. And somehow, somewhere along the lines of lockdown servers and NDA-sealed folders, that camera's footage escaped. It leaked. And within 43 minutes of its appearance on a barely known fan forum, it exploded. Millions watched as the golden matinee unraveled. But what shattered them wasn't Jungkook's desperation. It was Jimin's voice, calm, haunting, and distant when he finally spoke. "You're only sorry because it became public." No shout, no tears, just that. That single sentence struck deeper than any accusation, more final than a slap, more painful than silence. And then the video cut. But in this room, in this very moment, the real story was just beginning. Jungkook hadn't moved. He was still kneeling, even as security rushed in, even as Jimin turned his back and disappeared into the dark corridor. And now, hours later, inside a locked HYBE conference room, panic brewed. The management team was scrambling, faces pale, phones ringing nonstop. Bang Si-hyuk stood frozen in front of the screen where the footage had just played for the 5th time. The silence after it ended was thick, suffocating. "He warned us," whispered one of the managers, barely audible. "No," Bang muttered, running a hand through his hair. "He begged us." Outside the building, a swarm of reporters and fans had gathered. HYBE's polished glass walls no longer protected its secrets. Not after this. Inside the room where it had all started, where the footage had been taken, Jungkook sat alone now. A black hoodie draped over his frame, the same one he'd worn during the confrontation. His eyes were bloodshot, not from crying. He hadn't cried since the night in Busan 2 years ago. Not like this. Not since the last time Jimin walked away without looking back. The difference this time was the world had seen it. He replayed the audio in his head, over and over. That line, "You're only sorry because it became public." But he wasn't. He was sorry for everything before it went public. For the year of silence. For the messages he never sent. For the night he chose to protect the company instead of the one person who had always protected him. His fingers trembled as he opened his phone. Thousands of notifications. All his socials were locked now. HYBE's media team made sure of it. Still, he scrolled. Is this real? I can't believe Jimin said that. Something huge must have happened behind the scenes. But no one really knew. Not the fans. Not even the other members. Not even the HYBE staff who'd worked beside them for years. Only the two of them knew the truth. And the truth was, Jimin had warned him months ago. If you keep hiding behind silence, one day the silence will expose you. Back then, it sounded poetic. Maybe even melodramatic. Now it felt prophetic. In the corner of the room, the camera that had recorded everything lay on a table. The SD card had been yanked out hours ago, but someone had copied it. And whoever they were, they didn't want fame. They didn't even leak it to news outlets. They leaked it to ARMY. Jungkook looked up as Namjoon entered the room without knocking. He didn't say anything, just sat beside him in silence. Namjoon had always known when to speak and when not to. This was a not moment. After several minutes, Jungkook whispered, "He won't talk to me. I know. He thinks I betrayed him." Namjoon's jaw tensed. "You did." The silence was brutal. "But I know why," Namjoon added. "I just don't know if he cares about the why anymore." That's what hurt the most. Because Jimin had cared. Fiercely. Quietly. Relentlessly. Through injuries, scandals, long flights, and endless rehearsals. He defended Jungkook when the company turned cold, when the public turned cruel. And when the real storm came, when the truth about the contract manipulation scandal surfaced, Jimin had taken the blame. To protect Jungkook. To protect BTS. But Jungkook had stayed silent. That silence was his betrayal. Now the world had seen a glimpse of what that betrayal looked like, and the world wanted answers. Inside the HYBE press office, a draft statement was being prepared. This video was recorded without consent and does not reflect the full context of the situation. But Jungkook had already told Bang Si-hyuk to cancel it. "I won't lie to them anymore," he had said. For once, the room had no reply. He was done hiding. He stood slowly, legs aching from hours of sitting in tension. "Where is he?" Namjoon didn't ask who. "He left the dorm. We don't know where." Jungkook stared at the ceiling. "I do." Namjoon raised an eyebrow. Jungkook's voice was quiet. "He always goes there when he's hurting." Namjoon's eyes softened. "The studio in Gangwon?" Jungkook nodded. Namjoon stood too. "You're not going alone." Jungkook didn't argue. As they made their way through HYBE's side exit, avoiding cameras and whispers, Jungkook felt something he hadn't felt in months. Resolve. He didn't know if Jimin would ever forgive him. He didn't know if this wound could be repaired. He didn't know if they would ever stand on the same stage again without that moment echoing between them. But he knew this. He had to try, even if it meant hearing that sentence again. Even if it meant breaking all over, because some truths were worth breaking for. "You shouldn't have come here." Jimin's voice cut through the quiet of the studio like a knife against glass. The cabin in Gangwon-do stood hidden beneath heavy pine trees, its roof shivering under misty drizzle. Its porch, empty except now, for the man standing at its doorstep, soaked through, breath shaky, eyes dark from nights without sleep. Jungkook didn't answer right away. He looked at Jimin, really looked at him for the first time in months. He wasn't wearing designer clothes, just a plain gray sweater, old sweatpants, no makeup. His hair was longer than before, damp from the humidity, clinging to his temple. But it wasn't the hair or the clothes that made Jungkook's chest ache. It was the absence of softness in Jimin's eyes, of warmth in his voice, of any sign that the man who used to smile at him like he held the sun in his hands still existed. "I needed to," Jungkook finally said. "No," Jimin replied flatly, stepping aside to let him enter anyway. "You needed people to stop watching." The cabin smelled like rain and peppermint tea. A mug still steamed faintly on the coffee table. A single lamp cast soft shadows on the wooden walls. On the far side of the room, near the large floor-to-ceiling window, a blanket was thrown haphazardly over a worn-out couch. It was clear Jimin had been here for days, running, hiding, healing, or maybe just trying to. Jungkook stepped in and closed the door behind him. Silence followed, until Jimin said, without turning, "They're threatening to sue me." Jungkook blinked. "What?" HYBE. For breach of confidentiality, for damage to reputation, for leaking internal matters. "That's insane," Jungkook muttered, taking a step forward. "You didn't leak anything." Jimin turned to face him now, eyes blazing. "Didn't I?" Jungkook stared. "You think I did?" "No," Jimin said slowly. "I think someone did. Someone who was in that hallway. Someone close. And I think the company would rather punish me than admit their own walls are crumbling." "I told Bang PD to stop the statement," Jungkook said. "I told them I wouldn't let them spin this." Jimin scoffed, looking away. "Now you care about truth? That's not fair." "No, Jungkook. You know what's not fair? I carried your silence for over a year. Every time they pushed me forward as the shield. Every time they let the rumors pile on me. Every time they handed me the script and said, 'Say this for the group's image,' I did it. You think I don't know that?" Jungkook snapped, stepping closer. "You think I haven't replayed it in my head every damn night? Then why didn't you stop them?" "Because I was scared." Jimin's breath hitched. His fists clenched. "And I hated myself for it," Jungkook continued, voice cracking. "I hated that I let them silence me while you got bruised for protecting me. I hated that I became what we always swore we wouldn't. A puppet. A coward." "You were more than a coward," Jimin whispered. "You were the knife they used to stab me, and you watched it happen." That silence again, the rain tapping gently against the window, the kettle humming from the kitchen, and the weight of too many unsaid things pressing between them. Jungkook sat down on the edge of the couch. "I didn't leak the video, but I'm glad it's out." Jimin narrowed his eyes. "Why?" "Because now the world knows what you endured." "No, Jimin said coldly. Now the world pities me. That's not the same. Jungkook didn't speak, because he knew. Jimin wasn't angry about the exposure. He was angry because it came too late. And worse, because it didn't change what had already been broken. I tried to protect you, Jungkook murmured. That night, the night they told us to sacrifice someone, I thought staying silent would buy us time. Sacrifice someone? Jimin laughed bitterly. They didn't say that. They said, someone needs to take the fall to calm the investors. That's not a sacrifice. That's a business strategy. And you played along. Jungkook looked down at his hands. I wanted to believe we could fix it from the inside. Jimin leaned forward, eyes burning. You should have burned the whole system down with me. The room stilled. It was the rawest thing either of them had said, and it hung in the air like smoke. I would have, Jungkook said. If you asked. Jimin's voice dropped. I did ask. Not with words, but with every look, every warning, every time I begged you to speak. But you chose silence. A gust of wind rattled the window. Somewhere in the forest, a branch snapped. Do you remember Busan? Jimin asked suddenly. Jungkook's throat tightened. The hotel balcony, the storm, the trembling glass of whiskey between them, and the words Jimin said before walking inside. If this ever costs us who we are, promise me we'll walk away. I remember, Jungkook whispered. Jimin stood. Then why didn't you walk away? Because, Jungkook faltered. Because I was afraid to lose you. You lost me anyway. And there it was. The truth that felt like a punch. Jungkook stood slowly. Can we fix this? I don't know, Jimin said. You used to say we could fix anything. That was before I realized you were willing to let me bleed for your protection. Jungkook winced, but then Jimin added softer now. I'm tired of bleeding for everyone. There was a pause. Then Jungkook stepped closer. Then let me be the one who bleeds this time. Jimin looked up sharply. I'll go public, Jungkook said. I'll tell the full truth. Not just the part from that video. The contracts, the pressure, the silence, everything. They'll destroy you. Then let them. You think that'll fix us? No, Jungkook said. But maybe it'll free you. Jimin stared at him for a long time. Then something cracked, maybe just a breath, maybe a wall. And Jimin turned away again, walking toward the window. Outside, the rain had stopped. Fog clung low across the field. A deer wandered near the trees. They called me this morning, Jimin said quietly. They want me to release a statement saying the video was edited. You didn't agree, did you? No. Good. Jimin turned slowly. But I don't want revenge. I'm not doing this for revenge. Then why? Jungkook took a long breath. Because I want you to know, I see you now. Really see you. Not just as Jimin the performer, or Jimin the shield, or Jimin the friend, but Jimin the person who deserved better from me. Silence. Then Jimin said, voice barely audible. You're 4 years too late. Jungkook closed his eyes. I know. Neither of them moved for a long time. Then Jungkook walked past him and opened the door. Cold air rushed in. But before stepping out, he turned. If you ever need me to burn it down, say the word. Jimin didn't answer. Not then. Not yet. But he didn't close the door either. The sun barely rose the next morning. A heavy gray gloom draped across the mountains, blurring the horizon into ash. Inside the cabin, the silence was deceptively calm. Jimin sat at the edge of the wooden bed, a pen in his hand, an unopened notebook on his lap. He hadn't slept. Not really. Just moments of stillness broken by flashes of memory, of voice, of breath, of Jungkook's silhouette in the doorway offering to burn it all down if he said the word. But Jimin hadn't said it. And that silence, once his shield, now felt like a shackle. Meanwhile, miles away, in the heart of Seoul, chaos pulsed through the veins of HYBE headquarters. Legal teams flooded in before the staff could even power up their devices. Rumors had already leaked Jungkook had visited Jimin. Jungkook had refused to deny the video. Jungkook was preparing a live broadcast. Some said it was a hoax. Some said it was suicide. All of them were wrong. Jungkook was quiet. Dangerously so. In a private studio inside the company, he stood in front of the mic, headphones on, listening to the same raw track on loop. His voice, cracking, shaking, screaming. Not a song. Not polished. Just a voice memo from a night when he punched a wall until his hand bled and whispered, "I miss you." Again and again, like a prayer no one ever intended to hear. The staff watching from the control booth didn't know whether to stop him or let him finish. No one had seen Jungkook like this. Not even during their most exhausting comeback schedules. Not even when the company threatened to suspend him last year for pushing back against a concept he hated. Back then, he still kept his walls intact. Now, he was bleeding straight through them. Namjoon barged in, jaw tight, eyes darting around. "Where is he?" The intern barely pointed when Namjoon already reached the door and yanked it open. Jungkook turned. "I need you to stop," Namjoon said, stepping in. "I need you to let me speak," Jungkook answered. "You're about to set fire to a room full of people who still think there's oxygen left. Then let them breathe ash." Namjoon closed the door behind him, stepped forward, lowered his voice. "Do you think this is how Jimin wants it?" Jungkook's lips twisted. "You don't know what Jimin wants." Namjoon stared at him. "Neither do you." Silence. Then Jungkook laughed, once empty. Hoarse. "Maybe he wants me to vanish." Namjoon tilted his head. "Is that why you came here? To press record before you disappear?" "I came here," Jungkook said, "to unchain him, and maybe myself." Namjoon sighed and rubbed his temples. "You're not thinking straight. You're reacting to guilt." "Good." "What?" "Let me react to it. Let me carry it." He carried enough. The studio lights above buzzed faintly. The track looped again, Jungkook's voice cracking in the background like glass under pressure. Namjoon's tone softened. "You know the cost of what you're planning. It's not just your image or HYBE stocks. It's the other members, the fandom, the legacy." Jungkook's eyes flared. "Legacy?" he repeated. "Do you think legacy matters when the people building it are breaking?" Namjoon hesitated, and then Jungkook whispered something that nearly undid him. "I watched him change, Jung. I watched the sparkle die from his eyes, and I did nothing." Namjoon looked down. "I thought I was protecting the group," Jungkook continued, quieter now. "But I wasn't even protecting him, or me, or us." He paused. "He asked me once if we were still real." Namjoon's shoulders sagged. Jungkook turned to the mic again. "I want to give him back what was stolen." In the hills of Gangwon-do, Jimin was pacing. His phone buzzed again. Not from HYBE, not from the press, but from Taehyung. "You should come back. He's doing something reckless." Jimin didn't reply. Instead, he walked into the tiny bathroom, splashed cold water on his face, and stared at the mirror. The reflection stared back, tired and hardened. But under the layers, he still saw the kid who used to chase songs at 2 a.m. with Jungkook. The kid who cried backstage when Jungkook passed out from exhaustion during their second world tour. The kid who stayed up all night learning choreo just to stand beside him equally, not as a shadow, but as someone who mattered. And now, he didn't know who he was in Jungkook's story anymore. Hero? Victim? Villain? The mirror didn't answer. Meanwhile, Twitter exploded. Jungkook Live was trending globally. He hadn't scheduled anything. No teaser, no countdown, just a single post. "I owe the truth. To him. To you. To myself." And then the stream began. The screen was blank for a few seconds. Then Jungkook appeared. No filter, no makeup. Just him in a plain black shirt, eyes swollen, lips dry, hands visibly trembling. He exhaled. "This isn't a comeback announcement," he began, voice raw. "This isn't a promotion. There's no album. There's no tour. Just me." Millions watched in silence. "I've been silent for too long, and that silence hurt someone I love." He paused. He asked me once, "Do you still see me, or am I just part of the brand now?" And I didn't answer. Because if I did, I would have had to admit I wasn't brave enough to fight for him. People in chat began typing frantically. It continued. "The video you saw was real. Every second of it. And what you didn't see was worse." The screen cut for a moment, just enough to show old security footage. Blurry, distorted, but clear enough to catch a conversation between board members. "Jimin can take it," one voice said. "He's always been the softer one. Easier to redirect public anger." The room exploded. "Enough," another muttered. "As long as Jungkook stays silent, the public won't link it back." Back to Jungkook. He stared at the screen. I stayed silent. I watched them paint Jimin as manipulative, weak, replaceable. I let them write that script. I took a deep breath. I thought I was protecting him. I wasn't. I was protecting the system. He wiped his cheek. I can't undo what I did. But I can stop lying about it. The feed stayed live for 7 minutes after he stopped speaking. No music, no edits, just him, staring. And then he ended the stream. The world didn't react with rage. It reacted with heartbreak. Comments flooded in. We didn't know. You should have spoken sooner, but thank you. Where is Jimin? Is he okay? HYBE collapsed into disarray. But across the mountains, Jimin stood frozen with his phone in his hand. He had watched the entire thing, twice. And now he was crying not from anger, or regret, or nostalgia, but from the shock of being seen again, not as an idol, or a scandal, or a character in someone else's play, but as Jimin. He opened his notes app, typed one sentence. I told you, silence could break a person louder than words. Every building buzzed. Every phone vibrated. Every office from fan cafes to entertainment newsrooms was lit long past midnight. The city pulsed under the weight of a truth that was no longer hidden. HYBE's silence, once impenetrable, now cracked under pressure. No official statement had been released since Jungkook's unscripted live broadcast. No apology, no denial, no redirection. Just a terrifying, all-consuming quiet from a company that used to control the airwaves. Inside HYBE's top floor, chaos disguised itself as control. Executives huddled in tense meetings. Public relations teams drafted and redrafted scripts. Lawyers argued in hushed tones over clauses no one had read until today. Screens replayed Jungkook's words on loop, overanalyzing tone, breath, inflection, hoping to find a gap, a weakness, something they could twist. But nothing about the video was weak. It was painfully, uncomfortably human. And now Jimin had replied. Just one sentence. I told you, silence could break a person louder than words. He didn't post it on Weverse. He didn't go live. He didn't make a spectacle. He simply sent it, privately, directly, to Jungkook. But the effect was seismic, because somehow no one knows how the message leaked. And the world read it. Within minutes, Army flooded timelines with interpretations, speculations, defenses, demands. Some took Jimin's side without hesitation. Others begged Jungkook for answers. Some turned against the company altogether, declaring a boycott until transparency returned. But nothing compared to what happened behind the scenes. Behind the press briefings, behind the rehearsals no one attended anymore. Behind the image of unity BTS had always worn like armor. In a quiet hotel suite near the Han River, Jungkook stared at the message again. The screen glowed faintly in the dark room. I told you silence could break a person louder than words. His chest tightened. His fingers trembled. He wanted to reply, to call, to drive up to Gangwon and fall at Jimin's feet if he had to, but he didn't. He just whispered, I know, and cried into the pillow for the first time in front of someone else. Taehyung, who had been sitting silently by the window, looked over. You okay? Jungkook didn't answer. I should have done something too, Taehyung said quietly. Jungkook turned his head. You didn't know. I saw it, Kook. Jungkook blinked. Taehyung's voice cracked. I saw the meetings. I saw the pressure they were putting on him. I saw him walk out of a conference room with tears in his eyes, and He paused. I didn't stop him. I told myself I wasn't strong enough to fight the company, but maybe I was just afraid they'd come for me next. Jungkook sat up slowly. We all were. That's no excuse. Silence fell again. But this time, it wasn't the heavy, suffocating kind. It was the kind that hurt because of what it meant, that everything they had built, their dreams, their songs, their bond, had been compromised by the very structure meant to support them. Taehyung finally stood and walked to the minibar. They want us to do a press conference, he said, pouring himself water. I'm not doing it. They want us to pretend the video was leaked out of context. that you're emotionally overwhelmed, that Jimin's stepping away for mental health reasons. Jungkook's jaw clenched. They want to gaslight the world. Taehyung turned. And erase him. The words hit like gunfire. Jungkook stood up, walked to the mirror, stared at himself. He's not something they get to erase. Then what are we doing about it? Jungkook turned to Taehyung, eyes blazing. We're going back to the beginning. The next morning, Jimin opened the cabin door to find a package on the porch. No label, no branding, just a plain black box. Inside was an old USB drive. No notes. He hesitated for a moment, then plugged it into his laptop. The screen flickered to life. It was footage. Old, grainy, nearly forgotten. From their trainee days. Jimin and Jungkook, rehearsing choreography in a dim practice room, falling, laughing, getting up again. Namjoon coaching them through harmony exercises. Yoongi asleep on the floor. HYBE teaching Jimin how to balance his spins. Taehyung rapping terribly and making everyone laugh. Jin bringing water bottles and barking instructions like a stage mom. They were kids. And they were happy. Jimin stared at the screen for a long time. Then he noticed the date on the file. July 20, 2013. The day he almost quit. He remembered that night clearly. Sitting in the bathroom, crying into his hands, convinced he wasn't good enough. And then Jungkook had knocked. Quiet, unsure, but present. He didn't say anything grand. He didn't give a speech. He just said, "If you leave, I'll never learn to dance right." And Jimin stayed. He closed the laptop now, breathing heavily. The cabin walls felt too small, the silence too loud. He grabbed his bag. Meanwhile, at HYBE, the building was on lockdown. News helicopters hovered above. Journalists gathered outside. Whispers of mass resignation spread. Investors demanded answers. And Bang Si-hyuk sat in his office, staring at the phone in front of him. It wouldn't stop ringing. "Sir," one assistant said cautiously, "we've lost 3 sponsorship deals already. If this continues, the damage will be—" "Let it," Bang Si-hyuk said quietly. "Sir, let it all fall." The assistant blinked in disbelief. Bang stood, walked to the window, watched the storm he had created unfold. "I built an empire," he muttered. "But somewhere along the way, I forgot it was built on people." Downstairs, the BTS members had gathered. All 7. In the same room. For the first time in months. No staff. No script. Just them. Jin, recently returned from service. Yoongi, arms crossed. HYBE, pacing. Namjoon silent. Taehyung sitting next to Jungkook. And Jimin, entering quietly, unsure. They all turned. Jungkook stood. Jimin met his eyes. "I got the video," he said. Jungkook nodded. "It's not for sympathy. It's for memory." "I remember everything," Jimin said, voice firm. And then the room erupted. Yoongi was the first to speak. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "To whom?" Jungkook shot back. "To everyone," Yoongi snapped. "You opened wounds that don't just bleed for you. I exposed truth. You weaponized it." Namjoon stepped in. "He didn't. He just stopped protecting the lie." Jin exhaled. "We were supposed to stand together." Jimin's voice broke in. "How can we stand together when I was made to kneel alone?" Silence. Taehyung stood. "He's right." Jungkook looked around the room. "I didn't do this to destroy us. I did this because I love you. All of you. And I won't watch us become something we never wanted." HYBE nodded slowly. "Then let's fix it. Together." Junji's eyes softened. "But no more secrets." Namjoon smiled faintly. "Then we rebuild from the ashes." Jimin looked at Jungkook. "And if you loved me," he said, voice barely holding, "why did you let them erase me?" Jungkook stepped forward, trembling. "I didn't know how to fight without losing everything." "Then you should have lost everything for me. I'm ready to now." And for the first time in years, Jimin let himself cry in front of all of them. Because now, he wasn't alone. And maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something real again. The press room inside HYBE's headquarters had never been this quiet. Rows of seats filled with journalists from every major news outlet in the country, some from abroad. Microphones blinking red. Cameras focused. Every lens anticipating a statement that could either destroy the biggest boy band in the world or rebirth them in a storm of truth and rebellion. Behind the heavy doors of the green room, The members of BTS sat in thick, suffocating silence. It had been 43 minutes since the company's legal team begged them to cancel the live press conference. 38 since Namjoon threw the prepared script into the trash without blinking. 22 since Taehyung slammed a chair into the wall and shouted that if anyone tried to sanitize their words again, he'd personally livestream every contract clause they were ever forced to sign. 12 minutes since Jungkook left the room, his face pale, his knuckles clenched around the collar of his own shirt as if holding himself together was the only way to keep from exploding. Jimin stood in front of the mirror, arms folded tightly, staring at his own reflection. Not to check how he looked, but to remind himself he was still standing, still breathing, still real. His hair fell into his eyes. He didn't brush it back. Behind him, Jin broke the silence with a sigh. "You don't have to do this," Jin said softly. "We can protect you now." Jimin turned around slowly. "You didn't protect me then." Jin's eyes flickered. Regret settled on his shoulders. "I know," Jin whispered, "and I hate myself for that." Silence again. Yoongi leaned against the far wall, arms crossed, voice steady. "If we do this, it's going to burn. Everyone, not just the company." "Then let it burn," Jimin said. No one argued. Outside, the murmurs of the crowd grew louder. Inside, tension crackled like electricity. Jungkook walked back in. His eyes met Jimin's. "I'll go first," he said. "No," Jimin answered. "We go together, or not at all." The doors opened. Cameras flashed. Every head turned. 7 shadows walked toward the podium. No stylists. No glam. No handlers. Just truth. The host began to speak, but Namjoon raised a hand. No introduction. He stepped up, his voice calm, composed. "You know who we are." Jimin's heart pounded. Jungkook's fingers twitched at his side. Yoongi's eyes scanned the room like a hawk. Taehyung's jaw was set like stone. "We're not here as idols," Namjoon continued. "We're here as men, as artists, as humans. And today, we're not reciting a statement. We're telling you what happened." The next hour unfolded in tremors. Jungkook took the mic first. He looked at the cameras, straight into the eyes of every viewer. "I allowed something to happen. I didn't speak when I should have. I chose comfort over courage, and someone I love paid the price." He paused, breath shallow. "I was asked to remain silent while lies were built around someone else. Those lies served the company. They protected the brand, but they destroyed the person." He looked at Jimin. "And I'm not okay with that anymore." The microphones shifted. Journalists scribbled, but no one spoke. Jimin stepped forward. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't cry. He simply began. There was a meeting, March 3rd, 2024. In that meeting, I was asked to take the fall for a series of internal leaks and project delays that I had nothing to do with. He looked around the room. "They told me it was temporary, that I was more emotionally adaptable to criticism, that the public would forget in a week, that the group needed protection." He inhaled. I believed them. He met the eyes of one camera, then the next. For almost a year, I watched my image be twisted. I was labeled difficult, controlling, moody. Fans turned. Sponsors walked, and no one stopped it. Jin stepped up next. "We knew something was wrong, but we were told not to get involved, that everything was under control. We trusted the wrong people," Yoongi added. "They used our loyalty against us." Taehyung's voice shook with fury. "They told us Jimin was weak, that his breakdowns were manipulative, that he was ruining the group's cohesion." He looked straight into the lens. "Lies, every word." Hosea came forward. "We saw the signs, but we chose ignorance because it was easier than fighting the machine." Namjoon placed both hands on the podium. "Today, we end that cycle." One journalist finally raised a hand. "What do you want HYBE to say?" Jimin answered without hesitation. "Nothing." The room fell silent. "We don't want another corporate apology filled with euphemisms," he continued. "We want change, and we're not asking for it anymore. We're demanding it." Another journalist stood. "What does that mean for BTS moving forward?" Jungkook stepped up again. "If the company chooses truth, we stay. If they don't, we walk." Gasps rippled. Another question. "Are you implying you'll terminate your contract?" Jimin turned to the side. "Not implying." He pulled out a folded sheet of paper from his pocket. "I've already submitted mine." Cameras exploded. The room imploded in disbelief. Namjoon's eyes widened. Jimin? Jimin looked at him. If you loved me, he said softly, don't ask me to stay in the place that broke me. Jungkook's voice cracked. Please don't go. Jimin looked at him. You already let me. And then he stepped back from the podium and walked off stage. Alone. The audience didn't move. Even the HYBE security at the back stood frozen, unsure of what had just happened. Outside, fans began sobbing in real time. Inside the green room, chaos spread. Jin turned to Jungkook. Go after him. Jungkook didn't move. Go, Jin shouted. Jungkook ran. Down the hall. Past stunned staff. Past rooms that used to hold laughter and now only held ghosts. He found Jimin by the elevator, waiting, arms folded. I meant it, Jungkook said, breathless. I'll walk too. Jimin looked up, eyes wet, but calm. Then walk. Jungkook reached out, but Jimin stepped back. I need time. You'll have it. I don't trust you yet. I'll earn it. The elevator dinged. Jimin stepped in. Jungkook stood outside. Tell them the truth, Jimin said. The doors began to close, or I walk forever. And then he was gone, leaving the world breathless once again. It started with a door, an unmarked, soundproof conference room buried deep within HYBE's restricted wing, the kind of place no camera had ever entered, no fan had ever seen, and no idol dared mention without whispering. And that was where Jimin returned. Not because he wanted to, but because he needed to see it one last time. The place where everything had begun to break. He stood outside the door with a security pass he never returned after quitting. His fingers hesitated over the handle, eyes heavy with memory. For anyone else, it was just another executive meeting space. For him, it was the room where he had been asked to give up his voice for the sake of group optics. He opened the door. The room was cold, sterile. A rectangular table, 10 chairs, a projector hanging above like an executioner's axe, and the faint echo of decisions made without mercy. He stepped in. The air was still laced with the scent of corporate disinfectant and betrayal. The screen was down, blank, waiting like a silent jury. His footsteps echoed softly on the marble floor, and then came the voice from behind. You came back. Jimin turned. Bang Si-hyuk stood in the doorway. No security, no PR shield, just a man who looked far older than his last public appearance. His tie hung loose, shirt unbuttoned at the collar, and in his eyes was something no one had ever seen from him before. Guilt. You knew I'd come, Jimin said. Bang nodded slowly and closed the door behind him. They stood on opposite ends of the table like war generals ready to negotiate a ceasefire neither of them believed in. I never wanted it to go that far, Bang said. You just wanted it quiet. I wanted stability, at the cost of a human being. Bang didn't reply. Jimin stepped closer, his voice steady but sharp. You told me to take the hit. You promised it would be temporary, that you'd issue a clarification once the noise died down, that you'd compensate me in long-term brand value. Do you remember saying that? Bang exhaled. Yes. And when the rumors started that I was difficult, jealous, manipulating schedules behind the scenes, you said nothing. I was under pressure. No, Jimin said. You were the pressure. Bang's jaw clenched. You broke me, Jimin continued. Piece by piece, smile by smile, until I couldn't recognize myself anymore. I didn't ask you to lie. You didn't have to. You wrote the lie. I just carried it. Silence. Then Bang stepped forward. I watched your interview. Which one? Jimin sneered. The one where I was told to downplay my mental health, or the one where I had to say I supported a system that abandoned me. The press conference, Bang replied. When you said you already submitted your termination, I meant it. And yet you're here. Jimin's eyes darkened. I'm not back. I'm just collecting the final pieces of myself. Bang looked around the room. I don't expect forgiveness. Jimin didn't move. I don't even expect a second chance, Bang said, but I do want to fix what I can before everything collapses. Too late, Jimin said. You already lit the match. Bang opened a folder he had brought. Inside were photos, handwritten lyrics, drafts, a letter. Jimin's breath caught. My mother sent these, Bang said. They arrived the day after your broadcast. She said they belonged to someone brave. Jimin stepped forward slowly, fingers trembling as he picked up the letter. It was in his mother's handwriting. A note she had written to him before debut but never sent. If one day you forget who you are, I hope you find the courage to say your name louder than they say theirs. Tears welled up in his eye. Bang watched silently. "I tried to keep you boys safe," Bang said after a long moment. "But somewhere along the way, I started keeping the company safe instead." "You used us," Jimin whispered. "I built this company on your backs." "On your tears." "I know." Jimin looked up. "Then dismantle it the same way." Bang raised an eyebrow. "What are you asking?" "Not a rebrand. Not a new scandal buffer. Not another puppet apology. I want every single trainee, artist and staff to be allowed to speak freely. I want all pressure tactics dismantled. I want contracts reviewed publicly, and I want you to say my name." Bang blinked. "What?" "In your next press release," Jimin said, "say my name. Say what you did to me. Not as a faceless entity. Say it loud." Bang stared at him for a long time. Then, slowly, he nodded. Outside the building, chaos still brewed. Jungkook sat in a cafe across the street, phone in hand, eyes never leaving the entrance. He had followed Jimin not to interfere, but to be near in case something went wrong. Taehyung sat beside him, sipping coffee, sunglasses on despite the rain. "He's not coming back out," Taehyung muttered. "He's not running either," Jungkook replied. Taehyung studied him. "You think he'll forgive you?" "No," Jungkook said. "But maybe he'll believe I meant it." Taehyung nodded, his voice suddenly low. "Do you remember the night we thought about quitting?" "Which one?" "The one where we sat on the rooftop. And Jimin said if we ever had to lie to keep singing, it wasn't worth it." Jungkook smiled bitterly. "He meant it. He always does." They watched as the door opened again. Jimin stepped out. He didn't look around, didn't search for them. He just walked quietly, steadily down the street like a man who had just buried a war. Back in the room, Bang remained standing. He walked to the corner of the room where a framed photo of the original seven stood. He looked at their faces, their youth, their fire, their dreams. He picked up the phone. "Draft the release," he said to the assistant. "I want every line truthful, and I want it submitted for legal review by Jimin personally." The assistant's voice trembled. "Sir, are you sure?" "I'm not asking." He hung up and closed the door. Hours later, the statement hit the internet like thunder. It was raw, direct, no metaphors, no evasions. HYBE formally acknowledges the internal mismanagement and deliberate silence that contributed to the misrepresentation of Park Jimin. We failed him. We apologize without justification, and we accept the consequences. The world reacted instantly. News anchors choked mid-broadcast. Legal experts weighed in. Other idols began posting cryptic messages, some brave enough to name names. The wall of silence shattered. And somewhere in a rented apartment by the river, Jimin stared at the screen and cried, not because he was vindicated, but because he was finally heard. A knock came at his door. He wiped his face, opened it, and there was Jungkook. No words, just a breath, a heartbeat, and then finally a whispered apology that didn't ask for forgiveness, only understanding. "I'll carry it," Jungkook said. "For as long as I live." Jimin looked at him for a long time, then nodded. "Good," he said, "because I'm done carrying it alone." The apartment was quiet, not the kind of quiet that brings peace, the kind that vibrates with everything unspoken. That loud, aching hush that falls when two people sit close enough to touch, but history sits between them like a burning wall. Jungkook stood near the kitchen, eyes fixed on the floor, fingers twitching with the ghost of words he still didn't know how to form. Jimin leaned against the windowsill, watching raindrops streak down the glass like they were counting seconds he didn't want to give away again. "So," Jimin said first, voice low, barely above the hum of the city. "You came. I told you I would. That's the thing about you," Jimin said without looking back. "You always arrive right after it matters." Jungkook flinched. He deserved that. "I know." "No," Jimin said, turning now, his voice sharper, harder. "You think you know, but you don't. You think this is about forgiveness. That one apology is going to pull the knives out of my back. I don't think that." "Then why are you here, Jungkook? To cry? To promise you'll change? To be the martyr for something you let happen?" Jungkook's fists clenched. "I'm here to take responsibility." Jimin laughed, bitter. "Responsibility is a word people use when they're already too late." Jungkook took a step forward. "Then let me be too late, but still be here." "No," Jimin snapped. "Because I was here, Jungkook, when it mattered, when they tried to erase me, When they twisted my face into something I didn't recognize on screen, I stood in front of it all, alone. I didn't know how to fight them. You didn't try. I was scared, Jungkook said, voice cracking. They told me if I spoke out, everything we built would fall, and you let me fall instead. The room throbbed with the weight of that sentence. Jimin crossed his arms, chest rising and falling with slow, controlled breath. You want to talk about responsibility? Then tell me what you didn't say when they pinned the delay of the album on me. Tell me what you didn't do when I stopped being invited to certain rehearsals. Tell me why I was standing in front of flashing lights with a fake smile while you kept silent behind the soundproof walls. Jungkook didn't move. Because I thought I was protecting us. Protecting who? Jimin's voice rose. You? The brand? The fans who would have understood if you just told the truth? Jungkook stepped forward. I didn't know what truth to tell. Jimin's voice dropped into a whisper. Mine. Silence. A long, aching pause. Then Jimin added, softer now, all I ever wanted was for you to say my name when they tried to bury me. Jungkook's throat closed. I didn't say your name because I thought saying it would make it worse for you. Then you never knew me, Jimin said. Because saying my name would have reminded them I was still alive. Jungkook dropped his gaze, voice a whisper. I failed you. Jimin walked past him, grabbed a glass from the counter, filled it from the tap, and drank slowly. His movements were calm now, rehearsed, like he'd been having this conversation in his mind for a long time, only now he was done choking it back. You know what the worst part was? He asked. Jungkook turned his head. I didn't even want to leave the group, Jimin said. I just wanted to breathe, for 5 minutes, without hearing my own name used as a PR strategy. I didn't want you to leave either. Then you should have stood with me. I'm standing now. Jimin looked at him, long and hard. Are you just trying to undo what can't be undone? Jungkook stepped closer. I'm not here to undo. I'm here to start over. You don't get to start over, Jimin said, without standing in everything you helped destroy. I will. Jimin scoffed. How? Another live video? Another press statement? The truth doesn't make you clean, Jungkook. It just makes you visible. Then let me be visible. Why? Jimin snapped. So you can feel better about finally doing the right thing? Or because the guilt is too heavy now that everyone's watching? Jungkook's eyes welled up. Because I miss you. The silence that followed was unlike any before it. Raw, wounded, almost childlike in its ache. Jimin looked away first. You don't get to miss me, he said. I do. Jungkook whispered. Every night. Jimin turned slowly. I was the one who cried in studio bathrooms. I was the one who went home to empty rooms. I was the one who listened to staff whisper about how moody he's gotten while you smiled and nodded in meetings. I didn't smile, Jungkook said through clenched teeth. I sat there dying inside, and you let me die on the outside? Jungkook's voice dropped. You think I didn't suffer? Jimin turned sharply. I think you suffered quietly, safely, behind the shield of fans and management and privilege, while I bled publicly. Jungkook walked closer now, fire in his eyes. Then punish me. I don't want to punish you, Jimin snapped. I want you to feel it. I do. Good, Jimin said. Because maybe now you'll understand why I walked away. They stood face to face. Too close. Too late. Jungkook's voice broke. You were never the one who needed saving. Jimin didn't speak. Jungkook continued. I thought I was protecting you, but you were the only one protecting us. Jimin stepped back. Tears lined his lashes. But he didn't cry. I'm tired, Jungkook, he said softly. Tired of being strong. Tired of being symbolic. Tired of carrying other people's narratives. Then, let me carry you. You don't know how. Then teach me. Jimin stared at him, and then the door knocked. Both of them froze. Taehyung stood outside, face unreadable. You need to come, he said. What happened? Jungkook asked. They released the blackmail messages. Jimin blinked. What blackmail? From a staff member. Screenshots of private messages. Between you, between Jungkook, between HYBE's upper management, everything. Jimin's eyes widened. Taehyung's mouth was a thin line. It's all over the news. Jungkook looked down. Who would? Taehyung cut him off. Doesn't matter. What matters is the public now knows more than we ever meant to share. Jimin's body tensed. Taehyung added, they know about the pressure, the isolation, the manipulation, and more importantly, they know about the threats. Jimin whispered, they threatened you? Jungkook nodded. If I defended you, if I went public, they said they'd release my medical records, my family's history, twist the narrative. And now? Jimin asked. They can't, Jungkook said, because it's all out. Taehyung looked at both of them. You need to decide now, together. Are we going to war, or are we running away? Jimin stood still, then looked at Jungkook. I'm done running, he said. Jungkook reached for his hand, and for the first time in months, Jimin didn't pull away. The internet didn't break. It bled. The screenshot spread faster than any wildfire. In seconds, hashtags that had once carried joy and unity were now laced with sharp-edged truths. Black and white images of private messages, names redacted in some but fully exposed in others. Voice notes, transcripts of phone calls, time-stamped evidence of threats, manipulation, and abuse of power. But the most explosive of all screenshots of direct messages from a senior HYBE executive suggesting that Jungkook remained silent or risked the complete erasure of Jimin's career. ARMY was no longer just a fandom. It was an army. The fandom divided into two camps, not between Jimin and Jungkook, but between those who still believed the company was salvageable and those who wanted its complete dismantling. Boycotts began overnight. Protest trucks appeared outside the building before dawn, LED screens flashing bold letters. We don't stand abuse. We stand truth. Inside HYBE's conference hall, a meeting was in chaos. Managers yelled. Assistants cried. The CEO hadn't shown up in hours. Multiple legal advisors threatened to resign. The PR head fainted. And through all of it, the one man everyone had long feared, Bang Si-hyuk, walked in silently, holding a single sheet of paper. It was the company's drafted apology, the revised version. Watered down, manipulated, legalized, sanitized. He tore it in half. We're not doing this. Everyone froze. Someone whispered. Sir, if we don't respond soon, the damage might be permanent? Bang said, eyes cold. It already is. He turned to the head of crisis management. Set up the live stream. You're going on camera? No. Then who? He looked at the assistant beside him. Get Jimin. The assistant's eyes widened. He doesn't work here anymore. Exactly, Bang said. Which is why he's the only one they'll trust. Jimin was already on his way. Not because of an invitation, because he chose to walk in. He had read the screenshots too. Not with shock, he already knew the truth, but with a searing pain that came from proof. Seeing his suffering documented in black font on white screens, it made the nightmare feel fresh again. Jungkook walked beside him down the marble corridor of HYBE. No disguises this time. No PR walls to hide behind. Just two men walking back into the fire. You don't have to do this, Jungkook said. I do, Jimin answered. They'll try to twist it. Let them. They'll try to make you look angry. Ungrateful. Let them. You're about to burn every bridge. Jimin stopped walking. Jungkook, he said softly. Those bridges were never meant to carry me. Let them collapse. Jungkook nodded. They stepped into the boardroom. The live stream was already being tested. Cameras stood on every corner. Lights hovered like vultures. The staff was tense, afraid, uncertain. Jimin took the mic without waiting. The timer hit 0. Live. The stream went public. Hundreds of thousands tuned in. He stood beneath the white company logo. But he didn't look like a product of HYBE anymore. He looked like a man who'd survived war. My name is Park Jimin, he began. I was once told that I was the heart of BTS. That I held things together when others fell apart. That my softness made me lovable, and my discipline made me reliable. But that's not the full story. He looked directly into the main camera. What you didn't know is that that same softness was used against me. He pulled out his phone. I'm going to read a message I received from a senior executive 2 months ago. He held the phone up. Please understand, this is temporary. If you care about the group's longevity, stay silent for now. If this leaks, we will be forced to pivot marketing away from you. The public already thinks you're emotional. Let us handle it. He looked up again. That wasn't the first message, and it wasn't the last. His voice didn't shake. I stayed silent because I thought I was protecting my brothers. I stayed silent because I believed the company when they said this was about strategy. I stayed silent because I was afraid of what would happen if I didn't. He inhaled slowly. But I won't stay silent anymore. Jungkook watched from the edge of the room, hands trembling, eyes locked on him. Jimin continued. They told me if I defended myself, it would divide the fandom. They told me it would harm the brand. But I realized something recently. He stepped closer to the camera. If your truth threatens someone's brand, maybe that brand was built on lies. Silence. The chat exploded. Thousands of comments pouring in. Jimin kept going. This isn't about destroying BTS. This is about saving it. Saving the real parts of it. The parts that were born in a tiny dorm, on sleepless nights, when we were scared and hungry and hopeful. The parts that made us more than products. He turned his head. Jungkook, come here. Jungkook hesitated, then stepped forward. He stood beside him, visibly shaken, but present. Jimin looked at him, then back at the camera. This man, he said, is not perfect. He hurt me. He stayed quiet when he should have screamed. But he also came back. And in a world where most people run from accountability, he ran toward it. Jungkook swallowed hard. I don't forgive him completely yet, Jimin said. But I believe him. The chat went wild. Tears streamed down Jungkook's face. He whispered, thank you. Then, in front of the world, Jimin turned back to the mic. And now I want him to say my name. Jungkook looked startled. Jimin didn't blink. You want war? He said. Say my name in front of the whole world. Jungkook's lips parted. Then he stepped forward. Park Jimin. The words weren't rehearsed. They weren't clean. They were cracked and raw. You carried us when we didn't deserve to be carried. You loved us even when we were too afraid to love you back. You spoke truth when the rest of us were silenced by comfort. He turned fully to Jimin. And I was a coward. He placed a hand over his heart. Park Jimin, I'm sorry. And just like that, the stream ended. But the echo of those words would live on. That night, across the world, fans lit candles. In dorm rooms, in city streets, in front of company buildings. It wasn't a protest. It was a reckoning. It was a funeral for silence. And a birth for something truer. As dawn broke over Seoul, Jimin stood on the roof of the HYBE building, looking out at the city he once gave everything to. Jungkook stood beside him, saying nothing. Because some moments don't need words. And finally, Jimin whispered, this time, I think I can breathe. Jungkook looked at him. Then let's build a world where you never have to stop. The sun didn't rise that morning. It clawed its way through a haze of gray, bleeding weak orange into the skyline of Seoul, as if even the sky wasn't sure what kind of day it wanted to become. The streets below were already stirring. But inside the building that had once been an empire of silence and control, everything trembled on the edge of collapse. HYBE's main hall was lined with press again, though this time the energy wasn't anticipatory. It was electric, hungry. The leaked documents, the confession, the live apology, the names spoken aloud by Jungkook like a prayer or a sentence, all of it had shaken the K-pop industry to its core. Now everyone was waiting to see what would survive the quake. Inside the executive boardroom, Bang Si-hyuk sat at the head of the table. His face was pale, sleepless, stripped of the iron control he once wore like armor. Around him sat board members, legal consultants, PR directors, and one chair left deliberately empty at the far end of the room. It was Jimin's seat, not symbolically, not ceremonially, because he had been invited, and no one knew if he would come. The company's future wasn't in Bang's hands anymore. It wasn't even in the board's. It was in his. The door opened. All heads turned. Jimin walked in alone. No manager, no label, no entourage. Just him in a black coat, face expressionless, gaze cutting through the room like glass. Behind him, the silence followed like a shadow. Everyone stood, unsure if they were supposed to treat him like a guest or a ghost. He said nothing. He walked straight to the empty chair, pulled it out, and sat down. Bang Si-hyuk cleared his throat. Thank you for coming. Jimin looked at him. I didn't come for thanks. Bang nodded. Then let's begin. A lawyer at the far end began to speak. We're here today to discuss the terms of reconciliation both publicly and legally with Park Jimin. In accordance with the new transparency protocols adopted by the board and Jimin raised a hand. The lawyer froze. I'm not here to negotiate silence again, Jimin said. The room stilled. Bang Si-hyuk spoke gently. We're not asking you to. Jimin leaned forward, placing both palms on the table. Then why? He asked coldly. Is there still a gag clause in the last document you sent me? Bang blinked. Someone cursed under their breath. The lawyer shuffled papers nervously. That was outdated. A draft error. Jimin's voice sharpened. A draft error that just happened to mirror the exact language used to threaten me last year? Bang didn't answer. Jimin sat back. I'm not signing anything. I'm not returning to the company. I'm not endorsing any rebranding efforts. The only reason I'm here is to watch you say what you've never said before. Bang Si-hyuk's fingers tightened on the edge of the table. Jimin waited. Then, with a breath that felt heavier than the room itself, Bang said the words he had once weaponized into silence. We used you. Jimin didn't move. Bang continued. We manipulated narratives to protect our financial interests. We targeted your public image when it became easier to pin failure on emotion than to admit internal dysfunction. And we threatened your position with the group to ensure compliance. Someone in the room began typing furiously. Every word was being transcribed. Jimin's voice was calm, cutting. Say it all? Bang looked up. We pressured Jungkook to remain silent. We implied that speaking out would damage not just him, but you. We isolated you in project development. We fueled leaks. We encouraged members to take distance under the guise of image protection. Say it, Jimin whispered. We tried to erase you. The room felt deathly quiet. Outside the boardroom, Jungkook stood in the hallway, listening through the thin walls. His breath caught when he heard the sentence. The words he'd long suspected, long feared, now carved into air, like a wound exposed to light. Taehyung appeared beside him. He's not going to stop, Taehyung said quietly. I don't want him to, Jungkook replied. He's going to burn the whole building down, then we'll stand in the ashes together. Inside, Jimin stood. He looked directly at Bang Si-hyuk. You were willing to lose me to keep your crown, he said. Now wear the blood like a medal. Bang flinched. Jimin turned to the others. I don't want an apology. I don't want compensation. I want history corrected, officially. I want every internal memo that named me as a liability to be published with a retraction. I want every media outlet you privately bribed to smear me to receive a formal confession. I want a message sent to every trainee that they are not property. A younger executive at the back asked carefully, And what do you want in return? Jimin looked at her like she had just asked whether oxygen needed permission to enter lungs. I want nothing. I'm not here to bargain. I'm here to witness your shame. With that, he walked out. The entire room sat in stunned silence. On his way down the corridor, Jimin passed Jungkook. They didn't speak, but their eyes met, and something between them shifted, not healed, not erased, but acknowledged. Two scars finally facing each other in the light.